Before culture, before religion, before the very idea of sin was ever written, there was the program, primal, efficient, unforgiving, a single core directive code. There is a war inside the human mind, a civil war in the skull, a constant, grinding conflict between our better angels and our worst, most grasping impulses. The pride that demands to be right, the jealousy that poisons love, the tribal instinct that sees a stranger as a threat, the endless, hungry want for more. For centuries, the Abrahamic model has given this war a name. It calls it sin. It has told you that this internal conflict is your fault, a fundamental flaw in your nature, a moral failing for which you must spend your life atoning. In a prior investigation, we put the architect of this model on trial and found a grasping God. We ended by asking, if we are made in the image of such a being, what then is the sin of being human? The system tells you the flaw is in you, but what if the flaw is in the blueprint? This investigation is the answer. The grasping God is not an external tyrant who imposed his flawed nature upon us. He is a cosmic projection of our own most primitive, evolved survival. Once we understand that the divine character is a projection of our own primal programming, the entire concept of sin collapses. Now, the system's defenders will immediately raise a shield. They will accuse us of anthropomorphism, of foolishly applying human psychological terms to a transcendent being. This defense is a trap. We are not the ones making this comparison. The system's own founding documents make it for us. The Lord does not describe an abstract force. It painstakingly describes a character with a recognizable and deeply human psychology. It is a character defined by a fragile and infinite ego. The sacred texts are not just stories. They are the moral operating system of a civilization. They provide the ultimate divine precedent, a permission structure for our own pride, our own ego, and our worst impulses. Let us present the evidence. Exhibit A, the divine precedent for human narcissism and glory-seeking. Consider the human obsession with status, the endless hunger for praise, and the grasping need for validation. Consider the modern celebrity, whose entire existence is a performance designed to maximize their fame and number of followers. This is just the modern echo of the ancient cult of personality built by Roman emperors who demanded to be worshipped as gods. The divine precedent for this is the architect's want for adoration and glory. The system's own stated purpose for creation was an act of ultimate self-glorification. It is the divine model for the attention seeker and the source code for the belief that one's own glory is a worthy end in itself. Exhibit B, the divine precedent for human tyranny and divine solipsism.
Consider the human lust for power, rooted in a deep attachment to one's own mind, the belief that what I think must be reality. This is the program of the tyrant, from the dictator who rules by fear to the corrupt politician who crafts laws to serve their own interests. The divine model for this is found in the story of the righteous man who suffers and dares to ask for an explanation. The architect's response is not an answer. It is a terrifying monologue of intimidation. The divine precedent teaches that for the truly powerful, their will is its own justification, and the system's ultimate expression of control is its policy on dissent from within. The lore makes it clear that apostasy, leaving the faith, is the ultimate act of treason. This is not the model of a loving father letting a child find their own path. It is the model of a prison warden who cannot and will not tolerate an escape. Exhibit C, the divine precedent for human hierarchy. Consider our endless us versus them instinct, the tribalism that fuels nationalism, racism, and classism. The system's defenders will argue that hierarchies of kings and priests existed in ancient empires like Egypt and Babylon, and they
Exhibit D, the divine precedent for a transactional worldview. Consider the commodification of modern life, a world where everything has a price. The divine precedent is the architect's want for payment. The problem is not that transactions exist, it is that the system applies this cold market-based logic to the very things that should be sacred. The lore itself contains the ultimate proof. The story where the number of daily prayers was not a divine absolute truth, but a negotiated price, bargained down from 50 to 5. When even devotion is a commodity, every other transaction is sanctified. This is the source code that powers our own transactional world. It is the model for the preacher who is paid for their piety, the parent whose love is a wage that must be earned, the lover who keeps a secret ledger of wrongs, and even the illusion of intimacy sold as a product in the lonely corners of the internet. Exhibit E, the divine precedent for human dogmatism and fear of change. Consider our own deep-seated fear of change. This is more than a flawed blueprint. It is the architecture of a psychological prison, a system designed to make you feel permanently broken, creating an inescapable loop. It installs a flawed program in you, condemns you for running it, and then sells you the only cure, a cure that requires your permanent submission. It is a machine that runs on your belief in your own inadequacy. So, if this is our original programming, are we simply slaves to our own nature? No. This understanding is not a license to sin. It is the blueprint for our liberation. The old model of responsibility was that of a prisoner who feels guilty for the crime of being human and begs a flawed warden for a pardon. The new model is that of a gardener. The gardener does not blame the weeds. They consciously and diligently tend to the soil of their own mind. In our previous investigation into the self, we identified the primary tool for this gardening, meta-awareness. Now, we take this tool to a new level. It is no longer enough to simply see the thought. We must now learn to identify its origin. We must learn to name the program. You are in traffic, and another driver cuts you off. You feel that hot flash of rage. In that moment, you do not have to become the rage. You can observe it and apply the clinical label. The divine wrath program is now active. The wounded pride subroutine is running. This simple act creates. We have reviewed the evidence. We have dismantled the defense. The conclusion is inescapable. The relationship described is not one of a father to a child, it is one of a creditor to a debtor. And this leads to the system's ultimate moral paradox. Is an action good simply because this being commands it, making morality an arbitrary whim? Or does this being command actions because they are independently good, meaning there is a moral law greater than the entity itself? The system has no answer. It presents a divine dictatorship with no checks and no balances. The great deception is this: you were told the system was about your salvation. The evidence shows it is about its satisfaction. Your sins are not a bug, they are the fuel that it runs on. This is not just the profile of a deity, it is the blueprint for a consciousness built on need, on transaction, and on grasping. The self-proclaimed one true God is not a being of perfect completion. It is a being defined by its grasping, a claimant of infinite want. This brings us to the final, terrifying question. If this is the true nature of the system's architect, and if we are truly made in its image, then what exactly is the sin of being human?